Hello. Yeah. So, hello friends. I am Vineet, and this is my team: Shelja, Apoor, Siddharth, and Sunit. We are presenting our presentation on topic imagination at work. Okay. So let us begin with the presentation. What is imagination? Imagination, as you see, by definition, it is thinking or forming images of place, experience, person, object, anything. So it is a cognitive tool which helps you think about things which are real and which may not be real. Now let's see, why do we need imagination? We need imagination to understand things. Like in childhood, when your grandparents used to tell stories about some characters or some stories, we wanted to understand. We had to imagine those things, and then we used to understand. Through that, we can also connect it to learning. If we go back to our chemistry classes, when our chemistry teacher used to explain chemical reactions or bonding between two atoms, we used to imagine that between two spherical objects are coming close and having a bond together. That's how imagination is required. Again, to simulate or relate things, or imagination is the primitive step to create anything. To create anything, you need to think of something, you need to form a model, and then only you can go towards creating that particular object. Now, when do we imagine? What causes us to imagine? One is external stimulus. Like suppose there has an event occurred, and because of which you are thinking about that thing. Like there is a bomb blast in the city, and because of which you are thinking, you are contemplating things like what could have happened because of that bomb blast, how many people have died or something. So that is all imagination. Next is boredom. So you are lying on your bed, just watching at your fan randomly, thinking about the next day, what you're going to do, maybe going to play a cricket match, how much you're going to score. That is all imagination. Next is you are forced to imagine. Like the kind of job you have, you are forced to imagine. So in that imagination, you have to follow certain constraints, a certain rule. It's all structured and ordered. Whereas in subconscious, another type, it's kind of dreams. Like you don't have any limitations there. Let's see. Let's do this exercise. Like what occurs to our mind when we see those images? Like when a person sees the image on the left way, they can say it's a marriage place or church, maybe Hogwarts. Maybe the picture on the right, like when I saw that image, it occurred to me that how like people can form such formation in the air when they are skydiving at different times. Now let's see what are the factors affecting imagination. There are broadly two factors. One is environmental factor, the other one is psychological. Environmental factors are like when we know like people have different imaginative powers, basically because of environmental factors, like through what society their upbringing has happened and what were their past experiences. They drive imagination. Next is psychological, which is something from within. It's like, what is your emotion? If you're happy, you can imagine, your imagination is happy. If you're sad, your imagination is sad. It's all cognition, like what you think, how you think. Stress, under stress, how you think. Then perception, how you perceive certain things. Okay, next. Imagination and knowledge. These are recursive. Like one will help the other and the other will help the first. Like imagination, like in the pursuit of converting this imagination into reality, we gain knowledge. And then when we gain knowledge, our bounds of imagination increases. Next. But when we gain knowledge, like in the previous slide when we saw, it was all absurd. But here it's all structured. So when we gain knowledge, we get a direction. Next. Okay, let's see, is imagination better than reality? Again, just as I explained, imagination doesn't have any bounds. So like suppose if we are thinking, like some of us may think, next day I'm going on a date with my girlfriend, so what would she say? So imagination is like, yeah, she would say yes and I might get this. And in reality, what might happen is this. So imagination is better than reality. Next. Again, this is the example. Like some of us are very hardcore Harry Potter readers. They, while reading the book, we imagine certain characters, the places around the book. So, but when the movies were released, that was actually a disappointment for many of us. Again, the picture on the right, the Game of Thrones, another few examples of them. So this was about imagination and overall about imagination. Let's see what all we have in store ahead.
Hello. We saw what is imagination, how we perceive, how visualize, think, and what these visuals create. So for relating imagination to reality, we need to draw a thin line between imagination and creativity. Our brain, it is made up of tools. There are various tools in it, and for creating a reality out of imagination, we have to draw a line between imagination and creativity by segregating the abstracts from the imagination. So for generating the idea, I'll take these three tools out of my brain: imagination, creativity, and innovation. And it is very important to know which tool to use when. Like if we try to put a nail through a screwdriver, it will do the work, but it is not the ideal way to do it. What we need to use is a hammer. So what is imagination and its difference between creativity? Imagination is seeing something that is impossible, unreal, whereas creativity is converting this unreality into value. We segregate the things which are not possible. And like this child, he can imagine elephants flying, but how to convert it into reality is through animation. There we have created a value for it. And this is what is required at our workplace. So imagination is like dreams that occurs to us every morning, but they don't turn into reality. But creativity is taking these dreams which can turn into reality and proving them by creating innovation. Next. So in short, we can say an imagination, it gives thrust to creativity, which is a bridge between innovation and creating ideas. For example, a child who has never seen an aeroplane, he will imagine it like a big bird with wings. But his mother, who's working in the manufacturing organization, she knows the hard reality, the hairy problem, the complex things which occurs in the organization. So her limitation to imagination is something that gives her a conservative feeling, due to which she is not able to move out of the constraints, or there is a she gets packed in a small box. So how do we think? Like we can segregate people into 4 quadrants on the basis in which they think and their ability to convert this imagination into reality. First is zombie. These people, they dream, but they don't turn it into reality. They don't see anything coming out of it. These are serious people and we need to help them. Second is dreamer. We all are dreamer. We dream things, we note down things, but we don't have intention to convert it into reality. Then comes the manager. They have low awareness because their knowledge, the things they have learned they constrain them, they constrain their thinking. But for leaders, they have awareness as well as intention. They know how to think out of the box and convert this imagination into reality. So this is what we use at our workplace, and this is imagination at workplace.
Now we will talk about imagination at work, which is very important aspect of our future growth and opportunities. So as Albert Einstein said, logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. That means when we are finding solution to a problem, we are always limited to constraints of logic, but imagination has a potential to look beyond the boundaries. So like this is the question you should ask after 2 years of your MBA, that does your current job challenge your imagination? Like your job gives you a platform to ask why and why not, and what is the best alternative to the current solution and what not. And as Dennis Gunton says, anyone who can be replaced by a machine and will be. Because industry demands innovation. Industry looks for curiosity, innovation, imagination, and creativity. These are the driving factors for the upcoming industries. So a success belongs to a only person who answers why and why not. And industry looks for new products and services. So in the future, we are going to see this face-off between manual versus automation. So why are imagination and curiosity so critical to sustainable careers? now if we think ki we have learned some technology, it's good for us, we will pass on to the next generation, that is not going to happen because it's changing so rapidly. So why it's required? Because industry demands and even the consumers demand that. It helps to make their lives more simpler. So the careers which are very repetitive, so they are more likely to be transformed, will be taken into by automation or by robots. But industries which require innovation and imagination will be likely to be continue. Imagination in the workplace, why it is so important? Imagination and creativity are closely related. We have already seen that. But now as a managers, as we all are potential managers, why imagination is so important? So the thing is, we will be involved in solving problems, but unless you have insights into the problem, you should be able to imagine the solution and the problem itself. That's why imagination comes into picture. And even if you are working on innovating products and services, you definitely require an imagination. So just one example, when Alexander Graham Bell in 19th century invented telephone, he thought it was a magical idea, but before even inventing that, it was imagined. The idea was imagined, then transformed. So technology has advanced from that to phone, but future is endless. It's filled with endless possibilities. So these are coming up technologies. Now Sunit will continue with other examples.
Now I will take you to the journey how imagination has done wonders in the past. Let's have a look at these two paintings. This is a masterpiece by Leonardo da Vinci, a depiction of flying machine 400 years before it was actually invented. So Leonardo da Vinci was called by the smart people of that time an idiot, but he was not an idiot indeed. It was proved in 1903 when Wright brothers came up with the first aeroplane, and his imagination became concrete. And further imagination in 1969 led to Neil Armstrong to set his foot in the moon. And further imagination, human being set up its colony in space in 2000, and the journey still continues. You must be knowing this person, Steve Jobs. What defines Steve Jobs? An effective leader, an ultimate genius, an unbelievable person. But many of us, might not be knowing that he was lacking in his emotional intelligence, integrity, and humility. So you must be wondering how a college dropout turned out to become the largest innovator of the modern time. Certainly, it was his imagination. His imagination led him to discover iTunes and iPod, an endeavor to remove piracy and to give a larger platform, sharing platform for music to the world. And that was Steve Jobs. Can you imagine someone jumping off a 1,000-foot cliff and still remain alive? You must call me insane. And this is what the person who said so in 15th century was called. But do you know? It is possible. It just takes an imagination to do so. Michael Phelps lightly said, nothing is impossible. What people say can't be done, it is only possible by imagination. Let's have a look further.
So, till now we talked about what imagination led to in this world till now. It brought innovation and it created the world in which we are living now. And it is also required to sustain our growth. But imagination need not be abstract. It can be taken from our real life experiences, and it can be used in our daily lives also. Suppose a manager is working for the launch of a product called soap. So now what he will do? He will take data from the market survey, he will identify the market segment, he will identify what product he has to make, and then he will imagine what channels of communication he can use for promotion. Now, and then he can search for the similar launches in the previous and mix up all his experiences and imagination to have a successful launch. So here also we say imagination plays an important role. So now, how can we improve our imagination? Suppose we are faced with a problem, so what we can do? So first of all, we can ask our unconscious mind to give us some ideas. Suppose, like in launch a product, it gives us like, you can advertise, you can have a radio promotion, you can have maybe newspaper ad, you may have TV commercials, but say you are drawn too much that day and you cannot think of anything, then what you can do? Best thing would be to relax and indulge in yourself in some activities which you like playing guitar, football, so that you can remove anxiety and sadness from your mind, so to think of fresh things. Now suppose while thinking you got some pictures of cycle, battery and radio. This may sound absurd, but imagination need not be structured. It can be unstructured. So best way would be to note it down and then think what way you can use these pictures to come to some conclusion. Next. Now best thing will be, okay. So at the end, I would like to end with, say what he's using some garbage box, some thrown wood, and some beef meat to come with this imaginative guitar. So imagination is like both innovative and out of the box thinking, but it cannot be very structured. So you may have to think out of the box and come to some conclusion. Thank you. Okay. Any questions? No?
Questions?
Yeah. False memory, like, okay. Like, can you give some example of false memory?
Let's say I'm working in an office space. I don't
Okay.
like to work at all. Okay, it's 9 to 6 job. I'm bored to death. I'm not getting any other job. I don't like to work. I hate my job, my period. But still I'm working. I perceive myself as, okay,
Yes, you can definitely imagine that, because after passing, like after graduating from here, you can imagine yourself in a similar situation. So that's a false memory, but again, you can imagine. It's all up to how you put yourself into situations.
Your thoughts will be limited. Like if you smoke a cigarette or drink a coffee, you will get 65,000 thoughts. And if you are in a gloomy situation, your thoughts will be limited to that gloom only.
And moreover,
Ways
okay.
to develop creativity. Like
And moreover, if you have a negative thought, you may think of what that organization or what you actually want to do. So that will give you a platform for proactive action as well. Okay.
You showed the example of Harry Potter Aragorn when you said imagination is better than creativity. So I just have a problem with that. It's not universal. Let's say I do not have the capacity to imagine. Like when I saw Aragorn, I definitely felt that my imagination was much more stronger. But when I saw Harry Potter, it was a different world to me, the movies. Yes. So in this situation, imagination of the director was much more stronger than me. The reality there was the imagination of the director.
Definitely. If you see the other way around, if we see, there was one series, Lord of the Rings. If you see, that series is the movies are actually better adaptation of these things. So it is not restricted. Like imagination is definitely always not better than reality. If we see Apple products, so what he might have imagined then and what now we are getting as products are definitely, they are totally different things.
In a slide where you described what's the difference between creativity and imagination, you said that imagination is like something which happens only in the night. I guess if I'm not
No. We also included that imagination can happen anytime, but in case you're not getting any ideas, you may resort to rest or something, so that your mind can be free of all sort of anxiety or depression.
it was just an example that whatever dreams we have at the night, it is a part of our imagination. So there can be a portion of reality in it, which I told that in creativity you will have to segregate those portions which are unreal and bring the reality in the front so that you will be creative. Creativity gives a value to your imagination. That was the difference we meant to tell over there.
Okay. Okay. Check, sir.
All innovation born out of imagination.
Yeah, initially it was an idea, imagination only.
So, are there any accidental discovery? How can you attribute that to imagination? Any innovations were happened by chance, accidental discovery? How can you
Okay, you are talking of Archimedes, Eureka. But then after getting that waves, he must have imagined what else he can infer from that. So in a way, imagination does come into picture. Yeah, that happened. But what to make out of that? That is an imagination. Many of us have seen that thing.
See, basically, one of the type I told is like out of stimulus. So one that event occurred. So that event occurred, but he did not know anything about that, right? To come to a conclusion and to give a theory about that, he had to imagine, right? He had to imagine, and then he had to do a particular experiments, and then he had to prove it. That's how imagination goes. It's not like always you have to come from scratch, like to imagine something.
Even
Things
to
may
add,
occur.
Even to add on this, actually you need imagination for application part of it. If something just happened, so you need, for implication purpose also, you need imagination. So imagination comes into picture now and then.